Again, we appreciate everyone coming in, and I think this is our 5th or 6th year providing a commercial real estate market overview for the Dayton region. We appreciate I-70-75 giving us the opportunity to doing this. We kind of like the format. The audience has tended to like the format. I think we're going to continue with that. And I'll provide just a brief overview of what we see in the trends in the marketplace based on some of the research that we do within the market. Then I'm going to ask my colleagues here, Aaron Savino, who's handling our office and retail, Gerry Smith, industrial and land, Steve Ireland, medical, and then Kohl Kirkland, one of our newer associates on the staff, is going to provide a little bit of reflection on the Upper Valley industrial market, as well as some of the urban trends that we see within the marketplace. So to jump right into where the market, and it's pretty much the consistent theme that we've seen over the last couple of years. You know, the industrial market is continuing to strengthen. Office still remaining relatively soft. We're seeing some, you'll see in some of the numbers here, a little bit of positive progress on rental rates in all markets and absorption trends. And retail's been pretty steady. We also focus on the apartment market, but given the nature of this audience, we try to really focus on the other three. So today, just going to briefly touch on the some trends: vacancy, absorption, rental rates, sales price and sales volumes, construction starts and volumes, capitalization rate, what investors are looking for, some development trends and projects that you've seen in the paper and noticed, but we just wanted to highlight, and then what we see for the market cycle and forecast going forward. So I'd like to start up and talk about vacancy rates. Again, if you see the blue line, that's industrial. We continue to see a really strong progress with regards to the industrial market, coming back nicely since 2011 out of the recession, where it was hit pretty hard. We're beginning to see, which is very positive, some new construction. Obviously, and we'll talk about some of the projects in and around the Dayton area and the community. But again, as the market has tightened up, really the options now are really looking at a lot more new construction. Again, retail's been pretty much steady over the last cycle since 2007, and just office continues to lag. We just tend to have challenges in the marketplace, whether it's transition from hoteling office space, or if it's people working at home, or just quite frankly, we've had a lot of migration out of the marketplace with some corporate consolidation. So again, all trending though positive, which is good, and headed in that direction. The next slide shows absorption, which correlates with our vacancy. And again, you can see, and absorption shows how much space is actually being leased up within the market. And again, coming out of the recession was a little bit slow for this marketplace, but has picked up since 2012, and led by industrial. We've had, again, some really big gains with industrial. I think our estimate was like 2.5 million square feet being absorbed since 2012. So it continues to be a stronger market, a little bit off in our 16 study, but again, we see a lot of activity. Our panelists will talk about that here going forward, but again, some nice trends. Again, still office, a little bit soft, and that'll probably continue for a period of time. Rental rates in the commercial market, again, are all rebounding, as you can see by the information. Our average office rates are around $14.80 a square foot on a full service basis. That means that the tenant are pretty much paying all the operating expenses and rent. Retail and industrial more on a triple net basis. Probably the industrials had the most dramatic increase from roughly a little over $280 a square foot to now over $340 a square foot. Again, continues to show nice trends, and I think that as the market tightens, I feel like we're still going to see that progression occur. Most of the increase in probably the most active markets that we continue to see is really in and around the airport, up in the Upper Valley area. Seems to be, when I call Upper Valley, it's everything sort of north of 70. Continues to be pretty attractive and pretty active within that market. Again, average sales prices, we're starting to see some appreciation in our sales pricing and our values, where we're seeing retail over $70 a square foot on average sales, office rebounding to a little over $50 a square foot, and industrial, even though it's improving, most of the existing product that's out there has some maturity to it, and it's still hovering just right around $30 a square foot. But again, all good trends that we see, and again, trending nicely since 2015 and 2014. Construction starts and volumes, again, led by industrial. No great surprise. The big spike, that occurred in 12 was primarily the P&G facility, which added a lot of square footage within the marketplace. But again, a lot of activity and current activity that we see is going to continue, as I mentioned before, because of, again, a lack of inventory within the marketplace. Again, we still struggle on the, especially on the office market. I don't anticipate probably a lot, although I think we'll see a little bit of a spike with regards to some of the construction volume office, and we have the CareSource facility going up downtown, which is probably one of the most noticeable projects. Capitalization rate, this is what investors are looking for. We are still a third-tier community, so investors are very conservative when they look at the Dayton marketplace. We actually saw a little bit of an increase with regards to some of the industrial capitalization rates, and again, I think that's more of a reflection of the older inventory being acquired by developers. When you see higher capitalization rates, it means that there's a perception of a little bit more risk in the product and the market. So that did tick up for the first time in the 2016. I see that I would anticipate that trend to actually reverse and continue to drop down. Sort of interesting that the office is starting to be a little bit more attractive to the investor market. And I think primarily what we're seeing is a lot of out-of-town buyers continue to look at real estate, and office real estate is opportunistic within the Dayton market. So what's hot in the market continues to be industrial, mixed use, the urban trend, and medical in general. Again, from an industrial, I'm really pleased with how we've come out of it, out of the recession, a little bit on the slow side, but again, it's really picking up. Starting to see some nice wins within the market with some new construction. These are just a couple more recent with Spectrum's new building. I was just flew in last night late, and it's really nice to see that building there coming out of the airport ground, and in anticipation of another 500,000 square feet. Huge investment by that company in the Dayton marketplace. More recent announcement was a hematite, over 100,000 square feet facility in Inglewood. Canadian company looking at this marketplace, and I think they're very excited with the opportunities that are here. Stratacash continues to make an impact within the community. Again, you drive down 75, you see the two office buildings they have on 75. They're headquartered across the river, and this acquisition of this very large industrial warehouse facility that was sitting dormant and vacant over in Trotwood for their use. So they continue to be a local player. And then a couple others, United Grinding's new facility down in Miami Township, Miamisburg area, and nice facility there right at Austin Road. And finally, the Victory Warehouse continues to expand their presence. I think that was a 265,000 square foot addition in that market. So again, I will continue to say that we will see opportunities. I think Gerry will mention a little bit on the industrial. Continue to see a lot of activity on the industrial market with users, a little bit more automotive related, being it's manufacturing. So all good trends for this market. Again, I threw a slide in here, even though I didn't say it was hot. It's good activity, and that's an office. We haven't had that for a period of time, other than probably the activity we've had down and around Austin Landing. Most recent announcement of Taylor upgrading their office need in Dayton marketplace, leasing 140,000 square feet over in the 111 building. I think they're going to bring 400 or 500 people downtown, which will be much needed activity in our high vacant office market downtown. CareSource continues to have a huge impact on the footprint of this community, and again, their new headquarter building, over 300,000 square feet. I think they're estimated 800 employees at that. They will be vacating a couple buildings downtown when that is completed, Courthouse Cross and Kettering Tower in their announcement. So it will put a little bit of a void in the market But at the same time, any investment in the core, I think, is a positive trend. It just shows greater confidence within the community, and especially by them. It'll be a state-of-the-art building, and again, it's just coming out of the ground now. They also acquired the old Workflow 1 building here within the last 12 months for their continual expansion, which again solidifies. It's good to see acquisitions, so it solidifies longer-term commitment to the community. So again, we see that as a positive trend. And then most recently, everybody always sees the former design form barn, I call it, on the highway down in Washington Township. Most recent acquisition by Hospice of Ohio for their headquarters down in that marketplace was a good sale. It's showing what's nice about that transaction, which was about 3.3. It's good recovery because, quite frankly, I think that had been on the market years ago at a much lower price. So again, we're starting to see the recovery of our market, especially on transactions. Medical continues to be hot. Steve Ireland touched base on this. The Miami Valley South expansion. I think there's a $60 million, 2 buildings that are going to be occurring down there, 170,000 square feet. Again, great news for that sector of the market. Beacon Orthopedics, a group out of Cincinnati. If you're familiar with what I call Doc Holliday, is the Reds physician. Tim Kremchuk, it's actually his first venture coming up into this marketplace. He leased his group, just leased about 15,000 square feet down in Miami Township. So continues to show a lot of activity between Dayton and Cincinnati will continue. Kettering Hospital acquired the building in Oakwood, 2600 building, for a conversion. They really haven't laid out all their plans with regards to that, but that's a building that probably needs a little bit of a shot in the arm. It's been struggling for years, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with that property. And then finally, Digestive Specialists have 2 buildings coming out of the ground, about 30,000 square feet each for part of their expansion. Again, mixed use continues to occur, primarily most of the activity around the Cornerstone project there in Sugar Creek Township by Ober, and then Austin Landing. Both of those most recently reported they're beginning to get into their next phase of their project. Austin Landing across the street from the phase 1 on Austin Landing Boulevard, and then Cornerstone on the south side of I-675. So getting to see a lot of activity in those marketplaces. Then finally, the fairgrounds, obviously had some involved with that over the last several years. We're just happy to see it now has gotten to the hands of Premier and UD. I think and I anticipate that being sort of a slow process as they determine what they want to see in their vision on that project going forward. But again, it was a good opportunity for the fair to relocate and outside of the downtown core, and seeing that property develop will be exciting for the community. And finally, really what we continue to see not only in this market but throughout the Midwest, again, is this urban trend that's occurring. We're obviously involved with our partner, Cross Street Partners. I think Dave Williams is going to speak about this later on today on the Dayton Arcade. That's 400,000 square feet, mixed use. The plan is to do it 2 phases. First phase is everything on the south part of the block. It's that whole south block. It's around a $76 million investment. We roughly have about 84% of the funding identified. Still working on some gaps regarding that. We would like to close on the transaction later this year and begin construction. We anticipate probably a 12 to 18-month renovation time. That includes 130 apartment units, restaurants, microbreweries on the first floor. You've seen recently in the paper the Innovation Hub joint venture between Tech Dayton and University of Dayton with an innovation incubator, which would be very exciting. Other projects, Delco Lofts, Jason Wooder's getting real close with that. That was on the tour this weekend. 130 units in that project, very nice, great views in that. He has Lock 27 coming in sometime this summer. Be a nice addition to the already happening microbeer scene downtown. Wheelhouse Lofts, that's Wayland Ventures out of Louisville. There's 40 apartment units there on Wayne Avenue, nearing completion. That's to be open, I believe, on the 1st of July. They will have the Troll Pub, which is a bourbon restaurant out of Louisville, occupying part of that space. The Fire Block District, again, is a whole block there in the south central part of downtown by Elway Development. They are beginning to move forward on that project. Center City Building was awarded State Historics for 165 units, market rate. There across the street, a lot of this is centered around the activity around Dave Hall Plaza, which is the Levitt Pavilion. Will be located, and that's nearing completion of funding. That's a open-air concert venue. Have 50 free concerts. Very exciting for this community to get that because it's one of 9 in the country that Dayton was able to secure. And then really what's exciting with what we're seeing is this innovation, arts and innovation economy. We've talked about it in the past in some events that's occurring downtown, and this is this collaboration that we're seeing with regards to innovators, entrepreneurs in the arts community. We've seen this in other markets. It's happening here in Dayton. And really the first big step was the 444 renovation and the first step of AFRL, Wright Brothers Institute, of taking space in that building. That building is right now, it's 25,000 square feet. It's all occupied with co-share space and collaborative space. And essentially, it's a great opportunity of taking technology from the base and commercializing it and transferring some of that technology to entrepreneurs. That's the reason why Sinclair and Wright State Research Institute, UDRI, UD, are interested in participating in this innovation economy, because that's essentially what we call the secret sauce to make exciting things happen. It's all about hopefully creating jobs and bringing talent to this community and companies, with regards to that. So that is a trend we're seeing here within the marketplace, and very excited to continue to see the strengthening of the core. So where are we seeing the market going? We still see a struggle with regards to the office market. It's still in recovery, although it's getting close. When we start seeing some new construction, that's really when we're going to see it moving into an expansion phase of the market. Industrial, again, in expansion mode, again, doing very well. We continue to see that trend occurring within the market. Again, retail and multifamily still fairly active in an expansion mode. So again, we're very positive. We see very positive trends within this marketplace. We really are not sure what would sort of impact, although it doesn't seem to be to date with the new federal administration, in place, what's going to happen with interest rates. But, again, there still seems to be a lot of activity within the market. So that's just a really brief overview. What I'd like to do is pull in my colleagues here. Just do a little Q&A, and then what I'm going to do is open it up to the audience, get some your thoughts and questions, after that. But because of the activity in the industrial market, I'd like to start off with Gerry and just get your current assessment of the industrial market, and what do you see as the outlook?
Well, I've been doing this about 20 years, and I think this is the lowest vacancy for industrial that I've seen. It's in 20 years. It's been 3 years of straight up for the for the industrial market. We are still driven quite a bit by the automobile market. Even though GM has left town, all the suppliers are here, and the tool and die guys, and everybody is doing well in that. And I think we were selling like 17 million cars a year last year, and I think at the bottom reception we're selling about 7 or 8. So as the car market goes, so does Dayton to a certain extent. There's not much for sale. It's a very slim market. If you what's out there tends to have a little hair on it if it's for sale. And even some of that stuff is attracting attention. I have a 100,000 square foot underground bunker out at the Mound. It's not a lot of call Cold War era underground bunkers anymore. But I got people looking at it, which is, so it just goes to show you how tight the market has become. Prices are going up for leasing, prices are going up for sales, and like I said, it's been a good ride for the last couple of years. I'm cautious, though. I've been around long enough to see cycles and stuff, and I see Ford has got laying off 10% of their workforce, and you see more incentives coming back into the market. And I think car sales, they predict them to level off or decline slightly. I mean, during the recession, everyone was driving around 12, 15-year-old cars. In the last 6, 7 years, people have bought cars that had to buy them, and they're good product, they last a long time. So a little bit of concern that we may have leveled off from that aspect. I don't know what the retail aspect's going to be. Everybody from Sears, Kmart, Penny's, everybody is, that market is in turmoil, and they have all these big distribution centers. So Amazon is building, new distribution centers. What's going to happen to these old ones? There may be some of these other ones coming back on the market. So the trend has been great. If I was a better predictor, I guess I'd be a stockbroker instead of a realtor. But I just see some things that just take note that we may be leveling off just a little bit in the Dayton market. And one other point I'll make too is because we don't have a lot available, we don't know what we're not seeing in this, in this market. And what we have, a lot of it is a little bit unusual or maybe not the greatest location. In some other markets, Columbus, Indianapolis, et cetera, down by the airport around Kentucky, they might continue to see more market or more of an increase in their market just because they've got a lot more new product out there.
Steve, another hot market we talked about was the medical. What are you seeing? What do you see the trend going forward in 17 and 18?
Well, as you said well, Dave, the MOB or medical office building market's been pretty strong and robust of late. There's a lot of new construction out there, and I think that's being driven in large part by outpatient services and some specialty services and primary care that those folks are trying to come up with different ways to deliver their services to the marketplace, and the easiest way to do that is through a new construction because they have a different way of treating their clients, so to speak. How long that trend is going to continue is anybody's guess. And to Gerry's point, it's tough to predict what's going on that's driving the medical market because healthcare could be changing in some respects in the next couple of years, and the folks that I talk to just are trying to react to what's happened in the last 6 months as opposed to what may be happening in the next 6 months. So I think it's going to continue. There's no reason to think the trend won't continue, but I can't predict in 2 years what it may look like. The downside of the medical market, in my opinion, is the stuff which is being vacated to move into these new buildings. They're leaving old office behind that was built maybe 10, 15 years ago, and those things are hard to backfill because they're outdated. Their deliverables are radically different than the way the new office market's being built. I am seeing some activity with drug rehab and the opiate crisis in this community, and folks trying to get counseling centers opened, and so there's some drivers in that regard. And I've also talked to folks who are in the medical marijuana business, but what they're looking for are former bank branches. That appears to be the building of choice for any number of reasons, but that's kind of what I've been seeing, Dave.
But, by the way, those guys are coming out of the weeds too in the industrial market. So but
No pun
they're
intended.
they're looking for grow houses all over the country. We're getting calls. Yeah.
Aaron, retail, again, our third probably most active market. What are you seeing? What are some of the trends out there?
Can you hear me all right? Thanks, Dave. So the issues with the office market, I mean, it sounds all doom and gloom, but, I'm more active now than I've been probably in 7 years. There's people that were testing the market with 2 to 3 year terms. I think that's the the new norm is a 5 to 7 year term, which is, shows tenant confidence. The real issue with the office market is there's just way too much of it. We just have way too much office. You got landlords that are beating each other up because they're so competitive with each other, and that just drives the rate down at the end of the day. Yeah, the asking rates look like they're going up based off of Dave's PowerPoint there, but the truth is, at the end of the day, I'll show a client, maybe one office or two offices, but they've got 7 or 8 other options. So, I think that's important to note. But also, construction pricing is going up. So when they're looking at our office, I've never had an office user come to me and say, it's perfect, Aaron, we're going to take it exactly as is. There's usually at least carpet, at least paint, move a wall here or there. And that's all good. But today, office users want more collaborative space. They want more open space. They want less hard-walled offices. I've heard, this is kind of beside the point, but that's not necessarily working because it's too loud almost now, because some people need that privacy. But the truth is, I think that to get to a certain type of deal, a market rate deal, which we see is $14.80, you almost have to turn that space over exactly as is. It costs too much money for a landlord to be able to insert that kind of cash up front, for a tenant to come in for 5 years and make an economic deal work. It just doesn't. They just don't work. So that's probably the biggest challenge. And the other thing is, and Gerry, you can speak to this too, but decisions really aren't locally made anymore because of buyouts and mergers and everything else. It's very hard to get someone local who has any decision-making power to pull the trigger. Usually there's maybe 3 or 4 tiers that they got to go through before they're able to really pull the trigger and then sign a lease. And that makes it very difficult for the office market as well. I still think, the areas of tax advantage, townships usually do pretty well because that's important to owners and employees. They look at that first. I think that locally, a lot of cities step to the plate. And there's a lot of abatements and there's a lot of tax incentives that they do offer, which make it more of a level playing field. But just right off the get, the South market's probably the strongest market, followed by the East. The North is picking up steam, and it's downtown as well. I mean, everybody wants that mixed use. So I think that you'll see more users downtown. But there's no doubt about it. It's a tough market. There's just too much out there.
Kohl, we've talked a lot about the Upper Valley market being, pretty active, and nobody always, I think, recognizes that you're pretty active in that market. What are you seeing up there, and what are the trends from an industrial standpoint?
In the Upper Valley market, what we see, unfortunately, is that vacancy rates, I think, were quoted at about 10% market-wide, but in the most recent study I saw, the Upper Valley was at a 1% vacancy rate. And that makes it pretty hard to work with a tenant or a buyer in the market just because I can't show them much. And what there might be out there in that 1% just isn't good product like Gerry talked about. A lot of it's outdated or there's a reason this past 4 years of uptrend that it hasn't filled. And that's why we see a lot of companies building now. You saw Spectrum build, Dannon, Mitsui, and Sydney with 600,000 square feet just because you can't find product anywhere in the market. That's that modern high bay cross-dock warehouse space, let alone in the Upper Valley market. The office side, there isn't much of it, so it's doing okay just because there's not a lot of product. Especially on the modern side, there's a lot of downtown type of office, but it's not the sort of high capacity office we have down in this area. The things we see, the companies that are looking in the area are the certified sites are a big help. Knowing that we have ground ready that has utilities, that has rail if they need it, that has access, it's all there, is a great program the state's doing now. And the access to 75 and 70 with little to no traffic is also a big plus for a lot of companies. And that's why we see a lot of them looking north of 70 because you can get into that crossroads without any sort of traffic or holdup that you'd have south or east of town.
So, thanks, Kohl. So, Gerry, getting back on probably three-piece question here. Again, because we're talking probably lack of industrial inventory, potentially some new construction. What are users looking for? What type of product are they looking for? And where do you see some of those markets that product's going to be trending?
Well, I guess you can kind of break down the industrial into two. There's manufacturing and then there's distribution. The distribution people want as high ceilings as they can get. 95% of our market is 19-foot clear. They're looking for 30-foot clear. They want LED lights. They want cross docks. They want big truck courts. The trucks are getting bigger and bigger. They have like these apartment size cabs on them, so you need a lot of room to maneuver. They want trailer spacing, so they want a fair amount of space around their around their place, and that's all stuff we don't have much of in this market. Also, they're looking for high output sprinkler systems, ESFR, and we have very little. I would imagine 2 or 3% of our market's got ESFR sprinkler systems, and those are just high efficiencies. Cars now are about 90% plastic. We put all those plastic parts in a warehouse. The fire department won't let you go more than about 2 tiers tall without, ESFR, which you can't use your high ceilings. So that's something they're looking for. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of it. Of course, they're building it out by the airport and down in Monroe, and they are building some of it around, but we don't have a lot of that existing, and that's good for the build-to-suit market because they got to build it if they need to be here. The manufacturers, manufacturing's doing pretty well. They want power, and they want power in their buildings. Power's expensive to add, though, these days. The old days when DP&L was really making money off selling power, and they wanted, they would really help you out to bring the power in and set transformers and things like that. Now it's just expensive. So manufacturers, they definitely, I think their big one is power. They want more open concept modular manufacturing. They can move various machines around, so they want bigger bay sizes or clear span or to accommodate modular manufacturing. And then the one thing I'm hearing from everybody is, they've always wanted access. They've always wanted access for both truck access off the highway. I mean, 90% of our stuff's within 5 minutes of I-75, in this market, and some on I-70. But, they want quick access to the highway, but not only for their transportation needs for their product, but for their employees. And boy, everyone I talk to, it's tough to get employees. I mean, you want a forklift driver these days, they're tough to find, and prices are going up for them. So that's one thing that people come into town or looking around is, what's the employment market like here, and then where they'll move to is also influenced by the employment. So they're looking for locations that are close to their existing employment. If you're north of town and you move south of town, they're afraid they're going to lose. People aren't going to drive down there. They're going to lose those employees. So a lot of them want to locate close to where they are now if they're expanding. I will say, though, that I-75 being done through downtown Dayton may help that. I mean, it's always been such a choke point. Dayton it's been like the Berlin Wall across downtown Dayton. People north would not move south and vice versa. But boy, I tell you, that I-75 has really opened up. So that may change that just a little. They may change that a little bit.
Steve, obviously you go up along 75 between Dayton and Cincinnati. A lot of medical activity continues to seem to be sort of the battleground. What are you seeing? Do you see that trend continuing? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I definitely think the biggest concentrations of medical construction are taking place between Dayton and Cincinnati. You see what Tri-Health's doing in Westchester and the Liberty Township area. Kettering just bought a big piece of ground that they're going to build a hospital down in Middletown. You see what Children's Hospital is doing with their expansion in the Springboro area, south of Austin Landing. I mean, that's kind of where they tell me the rooftops are being developed, and so that's where they want to concentrate their hospital center. So I think that trend should continue as the shouldn't say this since I'm a native Daytonian, but the merger between Dayton and Cincinnati begins to, take place. I mean, I think we're gonna see a lot of activity take place between, Franklin down towards northern Cincinnati, and I do think that trend should continue.
Aaron, we hadn't touched on retail, so what are you seeing in the retail market right now?
Fast casual's king. Retail, it's a steady market right now. They're constantly moving. The truth is, behind the scenes, it's probably the most volatile market there is. E-commerce and internet sales are just killing the retailer. And if you don't adapt, you're going to die, which makes way for new retailers. I guess that's a whole new conversation what we do with some of these big boxes, but stores are stocking less, obviously. There's more internet sales, so they're going to be stocking less product. They're only going to stock what sells in the store, which means the footprint's going to be smaller, and they're going to be saving money. That's kind of how this whole game works. I looked at it. It was funny. I was going through my stuff from 2013 and 14, and internet sales made up $262 billion in overall sales for retail. The last quarter of 2016, it was $147 billion in one quarter. So it's a complete paradigm shift. People are purchasing everything online. With Amazon, talking about all the drones and everything else they're doing, it's kind of exciting to see, but it's also it's kind of difficult as well, because if they're not repositioning themselves, they will die. Restaurants do phenomenal. I think Dayton and the surrounding areas, restaurants are doing very well. And when they go out of business for one reason or another, somebody backfills them very quickly. The retailers, restaurant, local, almost anything, want experience. They want, they want the green. They want Austin Landing. They want something that's more mixed use. And the reason retailers love that is because, maybe there's a music venue, or maybe there's something more than just shopping, and shopping actually just becomes the secondary thing you do that night. So there's definitely a change in the market. And, like I said, behind the scenes, even though it seems very stable, behind the scenes, there's a lot going on. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I just think it makes way for new retailers, new ideas, and potentially a whole new market.
If I might jump into a little bit with what's going on in retail, I think the economic development people and city officials are going to have to figure out what they can do with these, the Kmarts that are coming available and all these big, these big boxes. I've sat on a couple of BZAs where I've lived, and it's going to cause some heartburn to take a big retail store and maybe turn it into a warehouse. But these online distribution folks, they like having these little warehouses close to, with good demographics, close to where their people are buying, where they deliver it. So, when you see like a Kmart all of a sudden punch, 20 little dock doors for little vans to come on and pick up product and deliver them out to the suburbs. And that's where, a lot of these retail centers are out in the suburbs. And fortunately for city officials, a building that leased for, $20 a square foot is going to lease for $4 or $5 a square foot, and the tax value, the property value of that probably is not going to be as much, but you are going to get some jobs, and you're going to have to reuse them. We saw the Dick's Sporting Goods there in 741. That's now an indoor air-conditioned store and lock facility there on 741. So that's a trend I think, you folks in economic development and city officials are going to have to kind of get your hands around is what's the best use for these things, and maybe you're going to have to get flexible or come up with some flexible zoning.
So I'd like to wrap up. Kohl's our resident millennial, part of our panelists. So I'd like to throw a couple lobs his way. So, obviously we're seeing urbanization beginning to pick up in Dayton. We see it quite rapidly in Cincinnati and in Columbus. So Kohl, what are you seeing in the rebirth of downtown, and what do you think about the projects that are coming out of ground and going forward?
I think the retail talk was a good transition, because what we're seeing is people are still spending their hard brick-and-mortar retail dollars. They're just not spending it at Sears anymore. Here in Dayton, we see a great transition now in our downtown to more experiential retail. So you have people coming down not to shop to get stuff, but to shop to spend a Saturday. And they're still spending the same dollars, but they're spending it more as an entertainment value. So whether that's food and beverage options or shopping for more unique products or local products, people are looking for a unique experience with their money, not, close your eyes and open them and you could be in any shopping center in the world. And so that's been a great boon to our downtown and even in some of the smaller downtowns. I know we're not all Dayton people here, but even in smaller communities, I had on my list Wapak up North Market. I don't think Greg is here today, but they have the most amazing every single store on Main Street is full, and it's not just another dusty antique shop. It's another restaurant or another store selling unique products, and they're busy. Greenville is doing a good job. Troy's doing a good job of that. And so it can be done in smaller communities. And if you're going to attract, we talk about workforce for industrial, if you want to keep bringing in people and not lose them to Columbus or to the coasts, you have to create a city that's going to be more dynamic and more unique. You can't just be like the next city down 75. That doesn't work anymore. People want flavor, they want unique, and they'll come spend their money and they'll live there and they'll work there, but you have to provide those amenities for them.
What do you see that we're missing, product or to attract more millennials to the market?
Well, there was just a great study. I think it was Forbes put us in the top 25 regions for millennials to move to. I think we're on the way. I think it just needs to develop more. Right now, we need to keep providing jobs for entry-level but decent-paying jobs. That's what really helped in Columbus over the last 20 years. 25 years ago, Columbus wasn't much of anything except state jobs. But you land good entry-level, high-paying, insurance, finance-type jobs, and the people that are going to come, frequent these establishments for retail are going to be here. And so keeping the job flow open and well-publicized, and the brand of the area. I have lots of friends from out of the area that are now living here, but it took some convincing because they look at Dayton as just an old industrial town that's, we're just Detroit South. And there's some ways you can use that to market yourself positively because that is the character and the flavor that people like, but you do have to pitch it as, it's still got that funky industrial feel, but it's progressive and it's moving forward. So the branding is what we need. I think amenity-wise, it's all here, but we have to showcase it better.
Okay. Well, I'd like to thank the panelists. I'd like to open it up to the audience for any questions. Okay.
With all the housing taking place in downtown, do you see a grocery coming, and where would that be?
Kohl, Eric?
I do, actually. Yeah, absolutely. Here's the thing. So, Dayton's got probably one of the highest occupancy rates, I think, in the country for apartments and housing. Is it enough to get a grocer? I don't know yet. I think that a grocer's going to look at that and say, okay, well, it's 96% of how many? And there will be one, absolutely. I don't know when, and as far as where, I can't tell you that either. But will there be? Yes. Here's another thought. I mean, you got CareSource with what, 1,500 jobs there? Is that in downtown? You got, and they're in several buildings, and they're going to plan a new building. But you have, and you got, Premier. But these two companies there, they have cafeterias in their own buildings. People aren't going out to, necessarily and spending their money on third-party retailers or restaurants. So that's always kind of an issue. I think that a grocer, it's got to be the right grocer as far as a grocery is concerned, and it's got to be the right. I mean, the timing is everything, obviously, and it's got to be the right time. I think they're still waiting for some critical mass in the office piece, and I think they're waiting for some more apartments to come online, and you will see grocer, I'm sure.
I mean, if you look at Columbus, all the growth that they've had in their downtown area and inner core, they still don't have a full-line grocery store. They have a concept that's called Hills Market, which is more of a boutique market, 15,000 square feet, full service, but it's about more of the experience. You get a lot of take-home, prepared foods and stuff like that. That may be the first step. I mean, whatever, because margins are so thin on grocery stores, you're going to have some subsidy.
It will be a concept.
You're going to have to remove their operating costs somehow. It's taxes. Is it free rent or is it something like that to lure somebody in? But the Cincinnati and Columbus have struggled. They're still. They still have the outlying Krogers or Eagle or whatever, that are up there. They're still are not down. They're third and main. So it'll happen at some point in time. But again, I think it's got to be incented for it to happen. Other
People
questions?
have to eat. They'll drive to a grocery.
Yeah. Other questions? Yeah.
With the industrial space in low vacancy, seems like a high demand, is there going to be a breaking point where there starts being a lot more speculative building? And we'll start putting up.
Spec.
I
The
think,
third rail. There's still a differential between what you can lease an existing building for and a spec building. And really I'm just going to throw out some numbers, but you're seeing a lot of stuff at, say, $350 net for existing buildings for like a 100,000 square foot building. You need to get around $5 a square foot for a new building. With that, so there's still that difference. So a lot of people the market's good, but their customers aren't going to pay them more money for their product because there's a shortage of space. They have a tough time absorbing those higher costs. If you can build a big building and you can go where there's a pre-1994 CRA, Community Reinvestment Act, that saves you about $1 a square foot. So that $5 square foot space with versus an existing one at $350, they have to tack on $1 in taxes onto that guy's rate for them to pay, whereas the $5 guy only, it was a guy CRA, he doesn't have any taxes to pay. So that does help narrow that gap. But you also need, in the Dayton market, we are a third-tier market. A lot of banks got burned in Dayton, Ohio. What they're worried about is if they build 500,000 square feet and that tenant leaves or goes under, who's the next person coming along? And our market is relatively small, relatively thin. It makes them nervous. So spec building, we are seeing a little bit of it, but not really enough to relieve that choke point. Now, there are people willing for good locations, willing to spend that a little bit more, a little bit more money on that. But we have not seen it. We still need rates. Quite frankly, I haven't seen at the end of the day net rates improve more than 10% in the last 10 years on industrial warehouse space. And the cost to build new, when I started, it was $30 a foot, and it's more than double that now. And yet rates really haven't gone up that much.
Yeah, I think what you're finding, if you see where the spec buildings are being built right now, have been mostly in Monroe. IDI's been that, and they're massive facilities, and they can bring that construction cost down, meaning that you're going to be able to bring your rental rate down, be more competitive. So obviously, the larger facility, the lower the per unit cost on rent and construction. We've had a number of candidates. North Point, who built the STP building, was the there's been some talk about a speculative building, but everybody's trying to hedge risk, and if they can land a user to at least take part of the building, alleviates part of that risk, going forward. But there are a number of players that are snooping around, that would love to do, whether it's a fully spec building or something of a pre-lease. I think that's how you're going to see people stepping into it. So.
And that also doesn't mean that if we had a 100,000 square foot user, we wouldn't build two. 200,000 square feet, maybe have something to lease.
Any other questions? Very good. Well, thank you. We appreciate your interest, and feel free to have any questions. Let us know. Thanks.